I'm Lyra Gillen, and I have my bachelor's from Indiana University in Visual Arts Education. This is my 7th year teaching at a primary school, and my research is on PBIS, which is also known as Positive Behavior Intervention Supports, effectiveness at a primary school. PBIS is a 3-tiered behavior system that schools use to help be a positive way to reduce kids' number of infractions or referral during the school week. The reason why I wanted to do my research on PBIS is because we've had this system in our school for about 4 years now, and I was truly wondering whether this system is best for our students and whether it really is helping change their behaviors and making it a better positive learning environment for them. My research is different than previous PBIS studies because most research that I found focuses on Tier 1 of the PBIS system. Tier 1 is basically the beginning stages of PBIS. It's implementing the program, teaching your staff about it, and how to implement it. Also, Tier 1 is the preventative stage of the behaviors, teaching the correct behaviors and doing positive reinforcements. I wanted to focus on Tier 2 and Tier 3 stages of PBIS, which is the phases where kids need extra support and extra things put in place to help their behaviors, like check-in, check-outs, and different things like that throughout the day. For example, some of the research that I found, you'll see resource 1 here from Ruan Hong, they just focused on the effectiveness of the school's accountability on the implementation. Or research 2 talks about that concluded that the teachers are not implementing their training correctly on the behavior interventions. Or resource 3 defined problem behaviors and agreed upon consistent consequences, but again did not focus on the Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions. Resource 4 talked about specific characteristics that interfere with children's abilities to learn. Or research 5, the implementation of PBIS was inconsistent. So you can see how my research is more focusing on those students that have 6 or more infractions a week. Can PBIS help decrease those amount of infractions through their support system? So the purpose of my study is to determine whether the PBIS strategies did improve students' behaviors and determining if the implementation of Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions reduced the number of behavioral infractions for those students. My hypothesis was that the frequency in infractions or referrals would decrease after the implementation of Tier 2 and Tier 3 PBIS. I believe that my research will impact other fields of study, because when you are planning to implement a behavior plan for your school system, it's important to research data that supports the plan that you're going to put in place. So I feel that school systems will be looking for my research and my data to help better their decision on what sort of behavior plan they want to implement in their school system. The method that I used is ABAB design process. The first A was baseline data, and then the next B was implementing the Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions. Then the next A was refraining from the interventions, and then the final B was re-implementing the Tier 2 and Tier 3 strategies of PBIS for those students. Each phase lasted 2 weeks, And throughout the weeks, we did different strategies for those weeks. So the independent variable was the Tier 2 and Tier 3 intervention strategies under PBIS, and then the dependent variable is the frequency and number of referrals or infractions for those students. A total of 11 students participated in this study, 6 boys, 6 and 5 girls, and they were all in grades kindergarten through 2nd grade. These students are in a school system in rural Indiana, and 3 students received special ed and 4 students received free and reduced lunch. For my measures, I used t-test and mean, standard error of mean, median, standard deviation, and sum. You can see some of my results here in Table 1. The t-test number is 2.655, and the mean difference was 9.455. So you are noticing that students' number of infractions are decreasing throughout the ABA phases. So this is comparing the infraction frequencies. Table 2 in the results gives you more detailed information about what was happening with the infractions during each phase. So you can look here at the mean of number of infractions during A baseline was 16.73, and then that significantly dropped when we implemented the treatment phase. The number of infractions dropped almost in half. Then the next phase, there was no treatment, and there actually was a decrease, which is kind of surprising, and it made me wonder, was it because there was no treatment for the 2 weeks, but we already did treat them previously, the behaviors, so were they still carrying over their memory on the behaviors during this no treatment phase? And then the final phase was treatment again, and it did take a slight drop again from the no treatment phase. So you can see that the data does show from the baseline to the final B phase that students' frequency of infraction is decreasing significantly, especially when you look at the sum here, 184 all the way to 80 in the sum of infractions from the beginning baseline data to the final B treatment phase. So what I learned through my research is that PBIS is working. It is helping students learn positive behaviors, and it is helping them decrease the amount of infractions they're receiving throughout the phases of the PBIS. Our results do mesh with past research. They actually don't really mesh with past research because the past research wasn't even doing a study on the Tier 2 and Tier 3 students. It was more, past research was more focusing on how the program is implemented or how do we do the preventative stage. So my research is quite unique to the PBIS theory. The results for students and teachers is very positive. It means that we do have a program in place that is helping support our teachers in the sense that if students' behaviors are doing well throughout the day, then that makes a better learning environment for them. to teach. And then it also is great for the students because that means they're able to learn better because they're not having as much behavioral distractions. So overall, I would say that the PBIS is, we found that it's doing its job, and it is helping the students decrease their amount of infractions within the school week. So some of the limitations I had throughout my PBIS study, first, I want to note that it was difficult to refrain from implementation during the no treatment phase, just because some of these students can have really difficult days behavior-wise, and for the administration, it was very difficult to refrain from disciplining for those weeks or reteaching a behavior that was really necessary, but that was necessary for our research to refrain from. I would say consistency is always a question when you are doing a research, just because there's so much staff and teachers and administration involved, just to ensure that each person is implementing the PBIS strategies consistently and equally the same. Time is a major limitation. I would have loved to have done a longer study because 2 weeks each for each phase is kind of a small indicator of where the students' behaviors really are. Especially we saw that in the second A phase, that the students' behaviors actually decreased a little bit, which we were surprised about because, but I was wondering if that phase was longer, if the students would start to drop off when they were getting no treatment. Immaturity is a question because we are dealing with a lot of kindergartners and just learning the rules, learning the ways of the school. It would be interesting to see more like a 3-year study to see if after the students really understand the expectations on their behaviors, if we would see an increase or a decrease more over the years in their number of infractions. What I would recommend for future research is definitely a longer research time. I would go as far to say to do a 3-year research on the PBIS Tier 2 and Tier 3 phases, just so you can have a longer interpretation of the way the students' behaviors are going. But even if you could just do like 4 or 5 week of each phase would help get a better indicator. And then the other limitations that we talked about, investigate from the previous page, just like consistency in your teachers and just like doing a study, maybe not including so many kindergartners because we're not sure if it's really their behavior, if they're just not understanding all the rules and the expectations quite yet.